Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to give you an early review of Blue Beetle. As you know, journalists, including YouTube journalists, get invited to see some major films early. Here's my early review of Blue Beetle. Of course, it's the story of Jaime Reyes and really his whole family, his sister, his father, his mother, his uncle, played by George Lopez, and his grandmother, and how he goes from recent college graduate to reluctant superhero and finds himself in the middle of a fight for his life and for the life of his family. So the movie starts off with him returning home to his family from college. They live in a poor neighborhood, and now that he's back from college, he gets a starter job working at the home of the owner of, or the CEO of Cord Industries, played by Susan Sarandon. Cord, of course, is the last name of her brother, Ted Cord, who was the previous Blue Beetle, who in the story of this movie has gone missing. He has a chance encounter with the Susan Sarandon character's niece, and she ends up taking a liking to him and offers to let him come by the corporate tower where she thinks she can hook him up with a job after he loses his job at Susan Sarandon's character's house. It turns out, though, that she is at odds with the Susan Sarandon character about how to run the company, because the Susan Sarandon character, you see, is evil, and she wants to use the company's tech for evil means, and she's been trying to get a hold of the scarab for 15 years so that she could use its abilities to create a super army to rule the world with. And the niece is not a crazy person, so she doesn't agree with that business model, as it were, especially because her father didn't before he disappeared. So she ends up stealing the scarab from the corporate labs on the same day that Jaime shows up to take her up on her offer for her to help him get a job. And in order to get the scarab out of the building, she hands it to him and makes sure that he gets out of the building, telling him not to even look at it, let alone touch it, which of course he does both of those things, as we know from the trailer, and it starts ingraining itself onto his person and forms a symbiosis with him, allowing him to become the Blue Beetle. But once he realizes this thing is stuck to him, he wants to get it out. And so he goes looking for the niece and ends up taking her back to his house, where she explains that, the Cord Corporation, which basically has their own private military, is going to be after him. And if he wants to get the thing out of him, she knows how to do it. They have to go get a key to a place where they can try to get it out of him. And the key, of course, is inside Cord. So they have to do a distraction and go in and get it. And of course, there's a confrontation there because not everything goes quite as planned. So there's some action sequences there where he has to use the suit. And then from there, they go to her old home that nobody lives in anymore. It's abandoned, and they go into the Blue Beetle lair, where he, along with his uncle, played by George Lopez, discover that Ted Cord was the previous Blue Beetle, who I guess was a famous superhero before he disappeared. While that's happening, the Susan Sarandon character goes and basically assaults Jaime's family because she's looking for Jaime to get the scarab back. And that causes him to go off to try to help his family, at which point his father dies of a heart attack, and he is taken captive because Susan Sarandon wants to copy the code so that she can build this army that I mentioned previously. And so the family has to go and rescue him. They end up using what I guess you could call the Blue Beetle mobile, which is like a flying Blue Beetle, which is also like a tank that can crawl on bug legs. So that was some pretty cool. There's some pretty cool stuff there. And then the rest of the movie is just, the central conflict, a lot of action sequences, combat sequences. And, that all leads up, of course, to the climax of the film, and then, the epilogue. So I don't want to really give away the ending, but that's the basic plot. I really enjoyed this movie. I liked it a lot better, actually, than Shazam 2. And if I'm remembering how much I liked Black Adam, it wasn't as much as I liked this. This is a much better movie, in my opinion. It's more enjoyable to watch. This isn't to say that it doesn't have some things about it that I wasn't in love with. I think it was kind of slow to get going. I think it took a little too long for them to get to the part where he starts using the suit correctly. Because, when he first puts it on, there's that scene from the trailer where he like flies in it out of control because he doesn't know what's happening and he's not really in control of the suit. And so, which, of course, was done before in other media, not the least of which was the first of the last three Spider-Man films when Peter Parker first gets the new Stark Industries spider suit. So it was very reminiscent of that. Although, Blue Beetle did it first because the suit, of course, is sentient and has a mind of its own, and that predates that particular Spider-Man sequence and film. But anyway, kind of took them too long to get to the part where he's kind of figuring out how to use the suit and, is actually in control of what's happening, at least partly. And so I thought that wasn't the best thing. I didn't like the George Lopez character at first. He seemed like kind of an ass, but that doesn't last too long. He does turn out to be a great character. The thing is that he has a lot of technical knowledge and they never really explain how that is. They kind of hint at it. So I wasn't totally in love with that, but it's one of those things you can get past by just suspending your disbelief. So it wasn't like a deal breaker. It's just something I noticed that I thought could have been handled a tiny bit better, but it's a minor critique. I didn't like Susan Sarandon in this movie. I'm a Susan Sarandon fan, at least her work anyway. And I think she's a great actress, but I didn't like her in this movie. I think she did what she could with what they gave her, but I don't think what they gave her was worthy of Susan Sarandon. I think Susan Sarandon's talents are way above what they gave her for this movie, and so it just stuck out like a sore thumb to me because she seems to have played it straight and delivered the lines that they gave her. And I think her as like the main villain of this movie, which she is, would have been much better if the character they gave her was worthy of her talents and if they allowed her to actually act rather than deliver the lines that they gave her, which I think were very sort of one-dimensional villain lines. She kind of comes off like a mustache twirling villain in this, and not a villain with multi-dimensions, which is more compelling, or which would have been more compelling. So I was bummed about that because I think it was a waste of her talents. But again, not a deal breaker. And I say that because the other elements of the film are so strong that it really does make up for that. And the other elements I'm talking about are the characters. The Reyes family is really great through this whole movie. And even the niece character is excellent in this movie. There's a whole lot of heart there. And the performances are great. And it's really a sweet family story. And it really just makes the movie. And this version of Jaime Reyes is really well done, I think, by the guy that plays the character. And the suit sequences, the action sequences are great. So that's really the core of the movie, the Reyes family and how they interact with each other. And those characters are important elements of the film. They're not just side characters or like minor supporting characters. They're really the heart of the film. The whole family is this movie. So and it worked really well. The only weird thing about it is that they're Hispanic or Latina or Latino, and they speak Spanish part of the time and English part of the time, which would be fine if part of the time they were speaking to people who only speak English and then speaking amongst themselves in Spanish. But what happens in this movie is they speak amongst themselves in both Spanish and English, which is weird because I don't think, an English as a second language family, except for Jaime and his sister, who are native speakers of English, would do that, would go back and forth between themselves in Spanish and English. It just struck me as weird. The grandmother speaks Spanish the whole time, but the father, the uncle, and the mother speak Spanish and English back and forth with the sister and Jaime, who also speak both Spanish and English to them. Like they're in a room by themselves. No English only speakers are there. but they speak English to each other part of the time. It's very strange. I guess it's just a function of it being a film, and they wanted to have moments where, Spanish expressions are used and Spanish idioms are used, and that's cool. It adds flavor to the movie, but it's just weird that they spoke in English the rest of the time amongst themselves. I just thought it was a little odd. But it again, it's not anything that takes away from the movie. It's just something I noticed that was kind of strange. But it's nothing. It's not even a critique. It's just something I noticed that kind of tickled me. But anyway, I think this is a really good movie. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 5, but it's definitely an 8 out of 10 or a 3 out of 5. It's very good. It's very enjoyable. It's a fun movie. It doesn't drag on. It's not excessively long. So it's worth seeing. It's a very good movie, and I think the DCU is off to a good start with this film. So that's really it. I'm gonna get out of here. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.